In this video, I'm going to share with you the exact strategy to control what is considered to be the most problematic weed in the entire world. Now, those aren't my words. I recently went to a presentation, sat through a presentation with an InView rep, and he was making a presentation on Poa annua. And he was quoting someone saying that this is the most problematic weed in the entire world, and that is true for lawn care as well as for golf courses. It's a real problem. He even went on to say that it's found on all 7 continents, which I couldn't believe that it was actually on Antarctica, but I take his word for it. So what am I going to do for Poa annua? Because it is a problem, and some of the things I learned in this presentation actually motivated me to change my strategy. And one of the things I think is an advantage of my channel is I'm usually pretty transparent about what I'm doing and what worked and what didn't work. The fact of the matter is Poa annua is becoming more and more difficult to control. Matter of fact, the speaker, who was an InView rep, he said, you know, if you would have told me we were sitting here talking about Poa annua 20 years ago, you know, it said that we were going to have a presentation on how to control Poa annua, I wouldn't believe you because it was so easy to control. But unfortunately, it's become more and more difficult to control. Now, I'm going to again give you the exact strategy, but let me give you a little bit of information on why it's difficult to control. Poa annua, let's just compare that with crabgrass, and I'm going to share with you my understanding. So crabgrass, we have this short germination window that happens late winter, early spring, wherever you live. Well, you put your pre-emergent down, and hopefully it's going to carry you through that short germination window and stop the vast majority of crabgrass. And my understanding is there's very little, if any, resistance to certain pre-emergence as far as crabgrass control. Well, when you switch over to Poa, one of the things that can make it challenging is it has a very long germination window that could start as early as, you know, in my area, I'm always thinking September. It's kind of when the weather starts cooling off, and that's when that Poa germinates. You get some cool weather, it rains, and you wake up and it feels like fall, and all the Poa starts to grow. Okay, well, that could also extend all the way until the following, in my mind, again, I'm thinking February, maybe even March, when the weather starts to warm back up. There's more Poa germinating, Poa annua. So it's a real problem because you got this long period of germination. Now, I've also been told that it's believed that the seeds can live in the soil for years. So it's not like, well, this year I got rid of all my Poa, and so next year there won't be any Poa seeds to germinate, and we should be Poa free. It unfortunately doesn't work like that. So it's a problem on a lot of different levels. Another way it's a problem is there is some resistance to certain chemistries out there for Poa. They can make it even more difficult to control. So hopefully I've illustrated to you the problem. And again, I knew Poa was more of a problem just from my own experience in lawn care. I know that I'm seeing more and more breakthrough with Poa, and just seeing more Poa in the lawn. And some years might be worse than others, but it is becoming a problem. Now, I've been using Spectacle Flow for years anyway, but when I saw the data, and I will say rarely do I sit through a presentation, I'm actually motivated to take action, but in this situation, it was very compelling, and again, was confirming what I was already thinking in my own mind. So let me introduce you to these 3 products, and then we'll talk a little bit about exactly what to do. This product's called Spectacle Flow. It comes in a 1-gallon jug or an 18-ounce jug. This product is called Celsius. Now, hopefully you're familiar with these if you've been watching the channel for any length of time. Also, another product that I might mention in this video is called Tribute Total. These are all InView products. If you didn't know, most of the lawn care products that you may have bought under the name Bayer are now under InView. InView also acquired some of the FMC products. They're now going to be under InView. That's things like Dismiss NXT, some of the other products that you may have heard of. All right, so what have I been doing and what am I planning on doing in the future? So in the past, I've been doing 7 applications on my Bermuda and Zoysia lawn. And in the fall, I was going out with 1 single application of Spectacle Flow at 6.5 ounces per acre. Now, did that work? Well, it did work, and it was improved over using prodiamine in the fall as far as my Poa control. There's other benefits to using Spectacle Flow. I think it does, in my opinion, help with American burnweed that you would get the following spring, or at least it seemed noticeable to me. But I will say that over the years, it seems like Poa is becoming more and more problem, a little bit more breakthrough, and that's been frustrating. Well, InView has come out with some more information I think was helpful, and again, the data was overwhelming to me, and I decided this year I was going to go from 7 apps to 8 apps. Now there was a number of reasons I wanted to do that. I wanted to build in an insecticide to my program. I got tired of chasing around insects. I thought I'm just going to deal with them on the front end. But another thing that allowed me to do by going to 8 apps instead of 7 was going to a split application in the fall. Now, the information I just received recently is saying if you did nothing else, let's say you were going to use 6.5 ounces per acre in the fall of Specticle, and they recommend anywhere from 6 to 9 ounces. They said if you'll just take whatever you're going to use and split it, automatically your results are going to be better. Now, there was a couple things they mentioned about that. One was that the results would be better because you are going to get a longer period of coverage just by splitting it up. So let's just say you went out there sometime in early September. Again, it's going to vary a little bit depending on where you live. Further south, a warmer climate, you want to delay it a little bit. If you live further north and it gets cooler, then you want to do this a little bit earlier. And again, Specticle is a warm season grass product for Bermuda and zoysia, centipede, St. Augustine lawns. So let's say I was doing 6.5 ounces. Well, if I would just split that, do one application, early, and then come back and do another in late October, November, something like that, then that would automatically give me better results. It would also be beneficial because, and this was something that was really eye-opening to me. The idea in the presentation was you want to keep the active ingredient there in the Specticle in the top 1.5 inches of soil, because what's going to make it effective as a pre-emerge. But what can possibly hinder the grass and cause some root pruning is when you put a large dose of it and it goes deeper into the soil. And so by splitting it up, you're doing small doses more often, keeping it longer in that window in that top 1.5 inches of soil, but you're also avoiding the large dose that could possibly cause a little bit more damage, especially when you do it in the fall as that grass is going into dormancy, storing up carbohydrates, and can oftentimes make it slow to wake up the following year. So that was very eye-opening to me and something I really took away from the presentation. And again, if I remember the data correctly, just by splitting it up, I could go from approximately 3.5 months of decent protection with that pre-emerge to 4.5 months by using the same amount but splitting it up. So that was really helpful, just understanding that. I appreciate the honesty by the InView rep, and he was just saying, we understand that Specticle alone, yes, is effective, and it's still effective, but the timing is super, super important of the application, but they are strongly recommending you add a post-emergent to also help with the POA control. So the one we're going to talk about today is what they're calling dual defense. Now this didn't just come out last week, okay? This wasn't new. I was familiar with the terminology. But again, understanding why it works made a lot of sense to me. So again, I'm near Birmingham, Alabama. I want to tell you exactly what I'm doing. That doesn't mean you got to go out and do exactly what I'm doing. You may want to do something totally different. To stop POA annua this year is I'm going to go out about mid-September starting my application. Okay, now that's for my market. If I live further north, I might start a little earlier. If I live further south, I might start a little bit later. So here's what I'm doing. I'm planning on starting in mid-September and going out there with 3.5 ounces of Specticle flow, okay? And then I'm planning on adding 2.5 ounces of Celsius. Now I'm going to just admit right here on camera that in my mind, I didn't think that Celsius was a product that I was going to necessarily be out blanketing on yards. When I think of products like Celsius, not that it's crazy expensive or anything, but I was like, no, that's something I use for spot treating. And I do use it for spot treating a lot. And one of the things I like about it is it's good in really hot weather. Good as in it's effective, but it also is one of the safest products you can spray without causing any kind of discoloration to the turf. But when I actually got to crunching the numbers at the 2.5 ounce rate, and they recommended anywhere from 2.5 ounces to 3.5 ounces, and again, on the Specticle, they recommend anywhere from 3 to 4 ounces in split application. Some people do more. He said, whatever you're using, if you're using 6.5, you want to split that up. I bumped it up to 7, so I split it 3.5 and 3.5 in 2 applications. So the concept behind this is you wait a little bit later on your fall pre-emerge application. The idea is that you want some of the POA to already have germinated, because Celsius, and I saw the plots with my own eyes where they tested out, against very young POA, Celsius is excellent. Against more mature POA, it's not as excellent. So he was showing plots and he was saying, look, in October, it worked great. In November, it didn't work great. And so if you can get the POA, again, for my time frame, kind of in that late September through October time frame, then Celsius can really help control it. He even made the argument that in some climates, actually a perennial weed that you'll see mature POA in the fall that has been there for quite some time. So with that case, we need to include a post-emergent into the application. Now, me as a business owner, I'm thinking about the cost. Okay, I'm like, well, what's that going to cost? Getting out there and spraying Celsius on all my yards. You know, that sounds more expensive. Well, at the rates I'm doing, 3.5 ounces of Spectacle and 2.5 ounces of Celsius, and because again, I'm going from 7 apps to 8 apps, and I'm now splitting my applications, I'm actually probably going to come out a little cheaper than if I was just going out there with 6.5 ounces of Spectacle in one application. So now I'm able to split it, which makes it more effective. Not just trying to take the money from the customers, I'm trying to be more effective and deliver results, but also has reduced my cost per application, and to the point where I can add this in, and I'm planning on taking advantage of the EOP program that InView has so that I can get the cost down even further on these products. And so when I crunch the numbers, I'll just be honest with you, it's not my most expensive application. I don't even think it's close, and it's definitely cheaper than what I was doing last year, and I think it's going to definitely be more effective. So for me, going out there once, starting mid-September with the Celsius and the Spectacle, and then following it up with a second Spectacle application, of which I'm going to add Simazine, 2 pints of Simazine, immediately following that, probably starting in late October, carrying me on into November. Now for me, I was typically putting out lime during that last application. I'm gonna probably have to switch that around next year and do that, you know, maybe in August when it's so hot, it's hard to spray much anything anyway during that time. And I'll be enjoying riding on my machine, throwing some lime out. So I had to tweak my schedule a little bit, which is something that I want to be open-minded to doing to try to get the best results. And again, I had to look at it from a budget standpoint and make sure that this was not going to be breaking the bank. I'm still making money. And I crunched the numbers myself and was pleasantly surprised that I think my applications are actually going to cost me less from adding that extra application. And according to the data I saw, I do believe they're going to be significantly more improved. And this is true with POA, it's true with crabgrass, it's true with most weeds. If we can control the weed with a pre-emerge on that first application, then it's going to be far often better results and less expensive than coming back in February or March and out there blanketing the yard trying to kill more mature POA, which is going to be more expensive. And also, we were talking about this yesterday with a friend of mine. He's like, yeah, when you kill POA, you know, when it's mature, it starts turning orange and yellow and it doesn't exactly look good. So the more of it we can control in the fall, I think the better off we're all going to be. Another thing I want to mention is that second application hopefully is going to carry us on into the following year to stop a second wave of germination with the POA. Well, InView's calling this dual defense. It's on their EOP program, so you can save money if you buy it. I'm personally going to probably buy a lot of Celsius and plan on storing it, and then I can use it next year if I need to as well. I wanted to briefly mention one other plan that they mentioned, and you may have heard of this too. They call it the Pre-3. And this would be the next level of control, but I'm personally going to try the dual defense first. But if this doesn't work, or if you got that problem yard you know is a sure enough POA yard and you want to go to this, then you could delay it even further and go with the split apps of Celsius, but in that second application, that later window, we're talking on into October, maybe into November, put 1 ounce of Tribute Total in there. Now again, in my mind, Tribute Total is not something I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna go blanket yards with Tribute Total. I'm usually thinking for spot treating. But at 1 ounce rate, again, when you're spot treating, the high rate's 3.2 ounce per acre. So we're talking about 1 ounce, so it's a lower rate. And yes, it is more expensive than Celsius, but at that rate, added with Simazine, added with the Spectacle, then the advantage of that is the Tribute Total will kill more mature POA. So with the Celsius dual defense, it is important. The POA obviously needs to have germinated, but it also needs to be very young POA. So that's why we're looking at that late September into October window. Not as effective once you get in November. If you're trying to kill at that point, then it would be recommended to switch over and put that 1 ounce of Tribute Total and the Simazine in the tank. I do believe my job is to deliver excellent results. And I think by not delivering excellent results, I'm usually costing myself money. But ultimately, I want my lawn care company to be the one that when and the neighbors post in their Facebook group, who do you recommend for weed control? I want them to tell them that my company is the one that gets recommended because they deliver the results and my yard looks great year after year after year. Improving my program, because I truly believe that by improving my program, getting better results, it's ultimately helping my business, which is obviously very important to me. Thanks for watching the video. Hope it's helpful for you. Leave the comments below. What have you done for POA? Has POA become easier or more difficult to control? And has this been informative for you? If you got any questions, please leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.